The Nashville Predators are probably the first team in this series where I just had a lot of fun watching who they selected in the draft. Barry Trotz has been on the record about going after a lot of skill in the draft, and they're doing that. The Nashville Predators were busy at Sphere during draft weekend, and the first selection they made was another one that surprised the audience in Jor Surin from Yaroslavl in Russia. Now, Jor Surin was a player that really grew on me in the last few months of the season. I love what he brings to the game. It's just, I think he has a lot to put together and become a well-rounded sort of distributor of the puck, but I do think that the tools are there for something really impressive. In terms of players in the draft with a combination of power, intensity, skill level, and wrist shot quality, he is probably pretty close to the top. He is a really intriguing player that has had some really impressive one-on-one moments in the games I've seen in the Russian Junior League. Now, I do think there are some hockey sense issues, as his passing can be a little bit reckless, and timing his passes is a little bit weird, and he causes some turnovers here and there, but in general, his results just continue to be really, really good. He has had some great one-liners since being drafted about how much he likes to throw his body around, and in my track data, that is absolutely true. So for me, Jor Surin, interesting pick this high in the draft, but I could see a lot of upside with him if you leave him in Russia for a few years. Then at 55, the Nashville Predators took one of my personal favorites in the draft in Teddy Stiga. Yes, I know. I had him ranked in the top 10 and he went towards the end of the second round. Frankly, at this point, I don't really care. I love Teddy Stiga. He's great. Super high intensity, just brings so much to the game that, look, watch the NHL playoffs. Look at the types of players that find a lot of success in the NHL playoffs. Is it the most skilled guys all the time? Is it the hardest shooters all the time? Generally, to me, the answer is no. It's the guys who can move quickly, move the puck quickly, get into scoring areas, and just make havoc happen in scoring areas and put pucks on net from the perimeter. Teddy Stiga does all of these things. He's got the speed to make it work. He's one of the best forecheckers I've tracked this season. He drives tons of pucks to the middle of the ice. There just wasn't a whole lot that Stiga didn't really bring, and I get the feeling that over a couple of years, people will look back on him as a late second round pick and go, yeah, okay, he's a good middle six winger, but why wasn't he drafted in the first round? That's great value for the late second, and frankly for me, I think Stiga has a ton of potential, and I think this was a great pick for the Predators in this range and clearly indicative of what Barry Trotz seems to be going after. At 77th overall, they drafted Miguel Gustafsson from HV71 in Sweden. Now, Gustafsson's a guy that I've liked all year, but in a way where I'm not thinking he's going to be a massive steal in this range. Just a really good skater who uses his long reach really effectively, has some underrated skill as well, and can sling pucks around with the best of them. One of the youngest players in the draft as well, so there's great potential for his development, filling out his frame and just getting more experience. And maybe there were defensemen in this range that I would have liked a little bit more than Gustafsson, but I was really pleasantly surprised to see him drafted this high, and I think it was a good pick from the Predators. I had him on my watch list, but I could easily see why teams would be willing to bet on him long term. At 87th overall, the Nashville Predators picked what likely is one of the highest pure talent players that was left on the board in Miguel Marquez of the Lethbridge Hurricanes. Now, if you ask a bunch of different people, they will have varying beliefs on Miguel Marquez. Some absolutely love him, others really question if he's ever going to see NHL ice. I fall somewhere in the middle. I think that he has all the talent in the world. It's indisputable. But this is a player that really comes and goes. You really wish you had more intensity out of him more often. And I just felt that Marquez was a player that did things himself a lot, and if he wasn't doing things himself, he just wasn't super involved in the game all that much. I know that there are people who have concerns about him as a person, and that is a big reason why he fell to this range of the draft. But in a pure upside swing, of which Nashville has done quite often, this is about as good a pick as you can make in that range, so it just adds to the high-skill, high-pace forwards that they've drafted in this class. At 94th, they went in a slightly different direction, taking Heroki Goic of the Kelowna Rockets. I've liked Goic for the last 2 seasons now. He's big, he's got great speed for a big man. I think there's some skill there that he brings out once in a while. He's a pretty physical player, and just all around, I think brings a well-rounded offensive game that he can chip in defensively with as well. I'm not sure how much offensive upside there is in the NHL, however, but I do think there's enough to make something out of him at the bottom end of your lineup. He's got a lot of the tools you need out of big players in order to work at higher levels, and I think with a couple of years in the WHL to just get more and more ice time and more confidence, I think Gosich could be a really interesting pickup for the Predators in this range. At 99, the Predators took Jacob Malota, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this because he's a goaltender that I honestly didn't see a whole lot of this year, but the analytics that I've pulled from my various sources are pretty decent on him so far this year. The limited time I've seen him, I've looked at him and went, I don't know, he's a goalie, so who knows, let's see what happens. But in the third round, there might have been players I would have gone for here, but he's the 6th player you've drafted, and considering who they swung on before him, you can't really complain. At 127th, the Nashville Predators went for a guy who I had never seen before in Victor Nuringer, one of the youngest players in the draft himself, and honestly, I think he was a really interesting pick. I went and watched a couple of games of him with Frölunda's junior team, didn't play a tremendous amount, but I do see why Nashville would go for him. He's big, but he's got really interesting speed in a straight line that he combines with really good body positioning, and he just makes little gaps and seams for himself and can push defenders off of him, and he's got a great wrist shot that he uses to score quite a few goals considering his ice time. There's not much war to his game in terms of a distributor or anything, but as a powerful winger that can drive through pressure and play at a high pace of play, I thought Noringer was a really interesting selection for the Predators, and at 127th, I mean, He's pretty good. At 213th, they went back to the world of Sweden, but drafted a Swede playing in America in Erik Pson, playing for the Dubuque Fighting Saints. One of the leading scorers in the USHL this year, I saw Pson quite a bit while looking at other players on the Saints. Certainly one of the high-end players in the USHL this season, albeit at almost 20 years old, but he is an interesting, skilled player that brings a lot to the game, and, you go to college a couple of seasons and maybe you get something here. It's 213th overall. He definitely scored a lot, and he definitely didn't look bad in the USHL this season, so it's an interesting selection, and I might have gone a different direction, but, he's decent. So all in all, I thought the Nashville Predators did great. I could nitpick here and there and say, maybe I would have gone this direction or this direction or this direction, but when push comes to shove, I think they got a really great, diverse, well-rounded group of players, and they're going to get a 1C from me. One of the best classes of any team in the league. I think Jor Surin is going to be a player that fans love when he eventually comes over. I am a massive fan of Teddy Stiga, and getting him at 55, I think is larceny. And then swinging on guys like Marquez and Gosich could pay off in the long term for a third-round selection. And Miguel Gustafsson was also a really interesting selection in that range as well that could fill out the bottom of their lineup in time. Outside of that, Noringer was interesting, Pson isn't on a bad development track and could become a thing, and they drafted a goaltender. All in all, I thought the Predators did extremely well, and only a few teams I thought did better. Predators fans, I think you're in pretty good hands when it comes to drafting with Barry Trotz running the show. So that's it for the Nashville Predators video. If you liked it, you could go to our description box and find our Fanatics affiliate link where we'll get a small kickback on anything you buy in the store, or you can go to Scouching.ca and get access to exclusive data you won't find anywhere else on both drafted and undrafted players, an exclusive Discord server, and plenty of other stuff you can check out there. So with that, we close out the Predators, and our next subjects will be the Stanley Cup champion Florida Panthers.